Kia ora. Good evening. Welcome to Code 9 New Zealand. And tonight we have a special guest, Sinan. How are you?
I'm doing good, Marcel. How are you doing?
Do well. So Sinan is a colleague from Arincos and and a friend like for like some time, right? Like from the technical community. I
Yeah,
think it's been like since a couple of years, I guess. You've been just in touch, right? And then just developing that sort of connection. And well, tonight we have Sinam in here, and you're talking about running multi-service apps locally with .NET Aspire. So can you just give us like just a teaser of what we are presenting?
it's about running multiple services, as you say. People take it as microservices, or it might be your front end, back end, and database, or multiple services. It's mostly focusing on running services locally from single entry point instead of dealing with Docker Compose and running services from like 5 6 different terminal apps, or dealing with the multi-project setup. So it give you like also opinionated NuGet packages as well. So yeah, we will deep dive into that. I guess I can stop here.
Nice. Yep. Before we start, right? So I'm going to introduce the user group for you coming like to maybe like the first time. And we have a purpose, right? So we're Code Nights user group. We're a community group of developers. We love coding, follow best practices on software development languages and technologies. We mainly focus on Microsoft stack, but we're open to all technologies. And the intent of the user group is to enable developers with practical knowledge to excel and launch their careers. Or you're always going to find particular content in here that's going to be useful to your journey as a developer. We're also part of AzureTire.com. We are a group of cloud native enthusiasts where we get to share the latest and greatest in the cloud native space. We're sponsored by .NET Foundation, which is the entity that looks after the different open source .NET projects. And JetBrains, software tooling for developers. With no further ado, Sinan, I'd like just to share like your screen, and the floor is yours.
Okay. I'm taking an approach of Scott Hanselman, so no script. I'm just gonna share screen and we're gonna have fun, hopefully. Um, so, and let me know when you can see the screen. So I will.
Yeah, you're in.
Okay, perfect. So we're gonna talk about .NET Aspire, and let's have a look about the overview on the Aspire documentation first. So Aspire, as the latest description, provide tools, templates, packages for building observable, production-ready distributed apps. One of the definition in the early days was opinionated distributed application development framework, which I really like. For some reason, they changed it to this to include tools, templates, packages. So, but yeah, that I think explained that as well. So Aspire comes with its own CLI called Aspire CLI, which is a .NET tool that you can install with uh, .NET CLI itself. And today we're gonna go over a couple of Aspire samples, and we also will create our own Aspire application starter template. And most of the samples I'm gonna go through today is generally forked from here. So there are other um, open source projects like Aspire for deploying Aspire applications to Kubernetes. We can have a look at as well. And also there's a talk I'm gonna do this Thursday about Azure Developer CLI and Aspire for deploying Aspire applications to Azure easily. If you guys are familiar with Azure Developer CLI, I'm not sure if you're gonna be able to have time to talk about this, but
Mhm.
look for Azure user group in Auckland. So let's go back to terminal. So what I have here is I have a .NET SDK. I think .NET info was giving us what I have here. So I have .NET SDK 9 and 8 is installed, but we're gonna use .NET 9. And with .NET CLI, we can do .NET Tool. So these are the global tools that I install with .NET CLI. So I can just use Aspire CLI with this. And Aspire CLI I'm using here is 9.4.2. I think this is the latest right now.
Yeah.
So when we do Aspire, it just gives us like a small help. Like we can create a new Aspire project. We can run an Aspire application with this. We can add integrations. We can publish and we can manage configuration. Let's start with Aspire new. So we can work with the existing project and start adding Aspire app host and service defaults, or we can just start with app host, service default, integration tests specifically we can add. But let's start with the Aspire starter template, which give us, so let's do Aspire test as a project name. This will give us a backend as a .NET API, a front end with .NET. I think it's using Blazor, and it uses a Redis cache. We can use it. And it also can create a test project for us, which is about testing distributed application. Like you can run your API and front end and you can test things. It's kind of integration test. One of the early days, one of the worry was about testing this, and they bring Aspire test. I don't know if they solve the problem with the getting the test coverage. That's something still I think they are working or they are about to bring. So let's go to the project that we create, and I'm just gonna open it with Visual Studio Code, and I'm gonna move this to another window so we can see better. So let's close this. So by default, when we create a Aspire project, create a solution, and it create 4 projects with the, in this case, 5 projects because we add test as well. It still use the old SLN projects. We can just remove it or migrate to SLNX, which is better. But at the heart of the Aspired application is we have app host and service defaults. So let's imagine what would we create if we want to just do an API and a front end. That would be like an API service with a .NET. As you see here, we have .NET 9, Web SDK is used, and we have a front end project which is using again Web SDK, and we have our components, Razor pages and stuff. If you want to run this application, we would run API service separately and web application, and they would also need to know which ports or where they live, especially when the front end try to call backend. With Aspire though, what we can do is we can create a bootstrapper app host that we define our projects with C#. In this case, API service is we can just reference it with this is a specific way of like it comes with the Aspire framework. We can, as part of the distributed application builder, we can add projects. We add our front end project as well with this way. We are referencing it. On top of everything else, we have here something interesting, which is Redis cache. So because we're going to run this application locally and I don't have Redis installed, what it's going to do is it's going to grab the Redis Docker image and it's going to build the container for me, and it's going to reference for the front end. If we have the cache setup here, good question would be how it knows the connection string for the front end. So let's have a look. So when we add Redis output cache here, we just reference as a cache, and that cache name is coming from whatever we define in the app host here. It's the same with the API service. When we have the API service here that we also define as a all lowercase API services name, when we want to reach API endpoints on that API service, we are using HTTP client setup here for reaching the API service, but we are not using localhost 4000, 5000. We are using service discovery that come with the Aspire. And all those beautiful service discovery and best practices are as part of being opinionated of Aspire. And when you have a .NET application, service defaults just give you extension.cs. If we just close all of this, untoggle all of them, we can see here at service defaults and map default endpoints. These are the opinionated best practice setups for our, or may not, it is minimum where you want to go with. Like it automatically configure our OpenTelemetry, add default health checks, handle the service discovery, and configure HTTP client. And by default, it comes with I think 3 retries as a resiliency with the HTTP, and also again service discovery for the HTTP endpoint as well. Instead of talking, let's run the application. So we are here, and I'm just gonna, there's 2 ways we can run this whole setup. One of them is we can go to app host and we can just do .NET run. This is the old way before Aspire CLI, or anywhere in the Aspire application repository, we can just do Aspire run and it will find the correct application and correct app host wherever it is stored, and it's gonna run that one, which we're gonna do later on as well. So when you run app host here, it will run API service, it will run web application as a front end, and also it will run our Docker container as well. For Docker, let's look at, I'm gonna make it. So this cache here running container is run by our application. So if I stop, it will disappear. Instead of stopping it, I'm gonna click this link because it is not, I'm gonna, here is good, I guess. This is when you run an Aspire application. This is what you have, Aspire dashboard. With the Aspire, other than being, giving you best practices for the resiliency and service discovery and stuff, on top of everything else, for observability, they give you Aspire dashboard. So these are all the services we are running, and we can see here the source of each service. So cache is a Docker container, API service is a project, web frontend is a project, and we have the endpoints here as well. So if I go to front end and if I navigate through, weather endpoint is calling our API that we know that. That's the kind of default .NET setup, weather forecast. It's kind of Blazor setup actually. So what we have here is, so I trigger a couple of things there, right? So I can go to console logs here. I can look my API service logs. I can see my front end logs, which have more because I trigger on the front end, and we can see the cache container logs. This one is specifically quite good because we generally forget to check container logs when you are running multiple services, and having every logs possible here is like as a console log is really good. But because it's using OpenTelemetry, we have structured and structured logs and traces. So when I call that weather API here, it go to Redis cache, And because it's first time I'm calling, it needs to go to API, get the data, and also set Redis cache. So we can see whole distributed trace here, which is beautiful in my opinion.
Yeah.
On top
Can
of that,
you zoom in a little bit more, Sinan?
yeah. So I
Cool.
think it was this one. So here we can see I hit the weather endpoint, which is this one, and it go to, because it's output cache on the front end, right? So it go to Redis, it's not there, so it go to backend, weather forecast endpoints, and it get the data and it set the Redis cache as well. And having this um, distributed logs is pretty useful if when you have like multiple services. On top of that, you can just click here and you can see the environment variables. That's what's been set. You can see container arguments for Redis cache there for front end. That's another thing I want to say. Even though we didn't set for front end should call backend on, what is the port here, 7493, right? We didn't set that, but it will still here somewhere. We're gonna see all the, okay, here it is. So services, API service, HTTP 0 and HTTPS 0 is set to correct ports. And this is handled by service discovery for us, that we don't need to remember ports. We don't need to remember, because that shouldn't be our main focus when we are developing an application. We shouldn't worry about the port number. We shouldn't worry about stuff. So this makes prototyping way faster. So you just create a Aspire application, whatever you need. Maybe you need 3 backend, 4 front end, and you have maybe like a message queues in between, and you just run it. You don't need to worry about connection strings, because when number of services increased, you start having problems. I'm just gonna, okay, it's not the thing. Because I'm running, when you run Aspire application on VS Code directly, we can give a try. I'm not sure if my VS Code set up correctly for that. It also come up with an extra component here called GitHub Copilot that you can query your logs. You can say what's wrong here, why this doesn't work, and GitHub Copilot try to help you as much as possible, which is pretty fun. So I'm losing where I am on my so that was, we run application, Aspire application from app host with .NET Run previously, but we can just here in the root of repository, we can just do Aspire run as well, and it will find the app host project, and it will create a .aspire folder, and it will set the path of the project, and we can run the same application this way, which is easier to deal with generally. So when we did this, it creates this as what is the path for app host. So it just did when we did Aspire on top of everything else. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move this to here, and I'm gonna move this terminal to here, so my brain works better. So I have a couple of examples that I want to go through, and those examples are actually about here. So Aspire come with out-of-box integrations that we can just start using, like, for example, if you want to use MongoDB, it says I need to start talking about Aspire hosting, but I will take a step back from that. I'm just going to talk. So these are existing integrations developed by Aspire team. On top of that, there's a community toolkit that let you run Java, Go, most of the applications. And if you don't have the setup here, if you don't have your language here or the tool you have here, if you can containerize that application, you can still run. We have an example of it. So here, let's talk about app host for a sec. For the app host, when they develop Aspire, they bring new set of NuGet packages, one for hosting, Aspire host, one for those best practices integrated with the existing libraries. For example, if we go open app host CS project file, we can see Aspire hosting app host and Aspire hosting Redis. This Aspire hosting Redis NuGet package or any other NuGet package that we can add, Aspire hosting service bus, anything that has hosting in it, let us define a resource here, which we're gonna see similar ones on the examples very soon. If we have a project, let's open our web application because it's using Redis output caching. So instead of using Stack Exchange Redis output caching, it used Aspire Stack Exchange Redis output caching. It's so hard to say Stack Exchange over and over again. So if you install this NuGet package instead of the default one, you start using service discovery and best practices come with it. If you have, as an example, SQL database, it will have built-in retries, whatever possible. And because of that, we have this service default projects as well. It's for your expense. You can just use it or not. That's your decision. And they give this as a C# file, like as a project that only contain extension.cs file, C# file, because they want you to define your best practices for that project, because this needs to be extended. So if you need to uncomment this, I didn't read before this, I forget what it was doing, but if you want to remove these for mapping default endpoints or the health checks, if you want to add more health checks other than defined ones here, open telemetry. There's an example that we're going to run today. If you follow the tutorial one by one, you configure open telemetry a bit more to use Grafana, if I'm not wrong, because open telemetry here is you need to export the logs and it used a default open telemetry exporter here, and I think this is just this, yeah. So if you want to do more than if you want to use Azure Monitor, you need to uncomment this part. So this service default extension is quite important on that sense. But if you are not gonna use any of these, if you're only interested in bootstrapping your application without worrying about service discovery and open telemetry, you can just run it without service defaults. But if you want to do named stuff, because you can still put here we can still put here with environment, you can put here environment variable yourself, or you can specify ports as well. You can say run on 4200. That's what I'm doing on my side project actually. So yeah, I was talking about these NuGet packages. So we're gonna see other NuGet packages with the examples. So let's go to examples. So okay, I'm gonna close this and open these ones. Actually, I'm gonna open sample folder. By the way, for the nerds out there, I'm using Arch Linux here. That's the reason.
That looks cool. I'm fancy. Yeah.
If you don't have life, you can do it. I would say. So maybe I should go one by one. That's also too much. So I have here a lot of examples. Let's start with Aspire Shop. Aspire Shop is when you read microservices book from Microsoft, they give you this Aspire Shop and eShop. And when they bring Aspire, what they did is they rewrite eShop with Aspire. So if we close all, I'm mostly gonna look at only app host projects because that should give us enough uh, enough idea about like what this project is about. It should at least. So another thing here is on top of everything else, I have a solution explorer here because I have an extension called C# dev kit is installed. So if it finds a solution file, it generally open as a solution in a solution explorer. It feels more like Visual Studio and very similar stuff. So if you look at the, should I zoom in or is it good enough?
One more, perhaps one more. Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. So in this project, we have a basket service. As I remember, it was an API. We have catalog service. We have a DB manager. This is running migrations, if I'm not wrong, for database migrations. And we have a front end. So this is 2 backend, 1 front end application. It uses Postgres database, and it call it catalog DB. Wait, I'm on the wrong file. So I need to open here. So still, it work with Postgres. This is another good thing. So you add a Postgres, right? How you gonna check? What do you have in the database? You can just do with pgadmin the Postgres package on not this. Sorry, app host. Aspire hosting Postgres package on top of adding just add Postgres, it also comes with pgadmin. So when you run the application, which will be run, we can just see the we have direct. We are running pgadmins in another container that has access to Postgres. Then there's like a conditional data volume check here. Then it added a database called catalog DB, and then it also add a Redis cache called basket cache with volume and also Redis commander. This is also part of Aspire hosting Redis NuGet package. So you have a UI to visualize your data. Then it add this the catalog DB manager. This is the one that kind of like reset the database, also like does migrations as well. And now we have our business services. We have a catalog service here, we have a basket service, and we have our front end. And as you see, there's explicit health check endpoints pointed out, and it's referencing the services. This is not very updated, but we start having wait for commands as well. Maybe it's not needed because of the correct chaining, but we can say unless catalog service is healthy, don't start, which is actually here. Sorry. Yeah, but I don't know why they didn't do for basket service. Maybe it's not that important. So you could do this as well. So with that, you can achieve the same thing with Docker Compose as well. But with this chaining, you can start your services in correct order, and you write C# instead of YAML. I was doing a presentation at Kubernetes, and I was about to bad mouth about YAML, but I realized they love YAML. So I was like, oh, yeah, you guys like it, but we don't. So I'm just gonna do Aspire run here. I download these containers before, so I have tons of Docker containers, so it shouldn't take too long to build. And I think this is the only project I upgraded .NET Aspire 9.4.2 as well. So I'm gonna copy this, and I should already have a browser here. So we're gonna see way different stuff right now from this. So we have a basket cache here on running with Redis. We have pgadmin. We can, if I can click the link, it's not running
It's still initializing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but Redis Commander is here. There is two Redis UI. It's coming with Aspire. I don't remember what was the other one, but by default, this was the thing. Another cool thing about Aspire is you have a graph view, and it's so wobbly. Like you can, when you are bored, when your PR are not merged, you can play with this. I'm gonna zoom out for the sake of this beautiful UI, and this kind of shows the dependencies of your services, and you can literally drag them around. It shows like which ports they have. It's nice. It looks healthy now, so we should be able to see pgadmin. I'm not sure if it was authenticated already. Yeah, it's authenticated, so we can see catalog db here, pre-authenticated already with the things. So I'm just gonna close this, and if we go to front end and if we go to traces, we can see this distributed application approach way better here. Like, these already, let's remove all and trigger a couple of things, maybe once. So next page maybe would bring more. So we can see like there's multiple, at least two services. On top of that, we have one database and one cache service as well. Like they're both database in theory, but we can see like distributed logging tracing work really well. And also we have the trace here as well, so we can go find the trace. Like we can, and also we can, again, if something is wrong in Postgres, we can directly from here go, and this is Redis Commander, but we can directly go to logs as well. So this is an example of running kind of like a Postgres as a database, Redis as a cache, a front end, a couple of backend. Like this is quite complicated demo. If you want to try to create from scratch, it will take a while to write this code. And they give it in the examples already, so it covers a lot of points of the Aspire, which we are not gonna go learn how to write C# here much, but yeah, we're gonna check other examples. So this was eShop with Aspire. So if we go here, stop this application. So in Azure, we have this serverless service called Azure Functions, and it is not here yet, but with, I go back to my wrong folder. Aspire with Azure Function. So if you look at this example, I'm just gonna run while waiting for this to, so let's move this to here and just run it while we check the thing. So with Azure Functions, you can run like triggered events, like more event-based approach, event-driven architecture. That's the word I'm looking for. And you might sometimes need to write Azure Functions, and it is still in preview as I remember, but you can integrate your application with Azure Functions as well. So on this example, we have it create a container app environment, You can also define your Azure resources. This one is talking about container apps. I know that app service is coming as well. Those are my favorite resources on Azure, like hosting resource. You can create a storage account with as an emulator, and you can have blob queues and also tables, as I know. I play with blobs and queues a lot. They are working really nice. With Aspire, Service Bus, and Event Hub are possible to run locally as well with emulators. That's I'm really thankful to Aspire because that push for that migration to running things locally. So here we have an example project as a Azure function. These, if we check the internals in a sec, we're gonna probably see some processing thing. Um, Generally, when you're running Azure function, you need a storage account and you pass it here. On top of that, these functions are working probably with queues and blobs. So it is setting them as a reference. And we have a front end project here. So if we go look at the function itself, what functions they have. Oh, it has a thumbnail generator. I remember this. So this one use access blob containers and queue clients. And if you look at the startup of this project, we can see easily they are using normally in .NET when you are adding a like service bus or database, any resource like SDK is generally builder.services. But one thing different with app Aspire wrapped NuGet packages that you use on the client side, they generally work with directly from the builder. So that's one indicator for me generally. If I'm seeing builder.add something, it is Aspire NuGet packages. But if it's builder.services.azure SDK, generally it is generally the naked, I'm gonna say naked NuGet packages. So these are Aspire NuGet packages, and if we check the project itself, these are Aspire storage blob and Aspire storage queues on top of everything else they have here. So we are running the application. So let's copy the URL and go to our browser. Let's try Firefox now. Works on Firefox as well. So
Yeah.
so if we go to front end, I need to select the file. I don't know what I'm gonna select. Let's go to documents, downloads. I have no idea what. I think this is for like JPEG and stuff. Do I have any picture? Yeah, I have an error here. Let's see what this is gonna do. I don't remember what does this demo do. I just checked the examples and stuff. So oops, maybe Firefox doesn't work that well. So yeah, I think I triggered the function and it starts processing things. I don't think we should check the code because examples are there. People can take down the code and run and look. But as you know, Marcel, I'm working with Azure Function these days with my current client, and I'm using Aspire. So I have Aspire set up with Azure Function and exactly with blobs and queues. And if I didn't have Aspire, I would have too much access problem probably. Um, so working with Aspire, running
Yeah.
things locally without thinking, and on top of this, I'm adding SQL database as well on mine.
Yeah.
It is great to have these tools on our.
Yeah. What I like is that like you don't need to launch Azure right? So you just run in the containers that probably are referencing Azure right over
Yeah,
there. It just hooked automatically.
I can
It's beautiful.
actually open here Docker and we can see storage container here is using Azurite.
Yeah.
You're right. I mean, Azurite is as I know, it's the only way to run Azure um, storage accounts. I couldn't
Yeah,
find
yeah, the
the
storage
term.
account
Storage.
emulator,
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
this is the emulator. Yeah, it's running,
yeah.
and it's running Postgres as well. So
Nice.
this is, I think we are going slow. So what else do we have? We have one thing is when I talk about Aspire to people, they are like, oh, okay, it's .NET, like, and Blazor maybe, or Razor
Hmm.
Pages, but it's not just that. It is, so let's talk about with other JavaScript ones. So you can run, as I said earlier, anything you can run in a container, you can run with Aspire, which we have an example for it. But by default, Aspire, I'm just going to open the app host on this one. We can run it. We should run this project as well. But this example is really good one. I really like this example because I'm using Angular on my fun side project. So with Aspire, they add another way of adding. So if you open the at the same time project file, we can see here Aspire hosting Node.js. With these, you can add npm. I think you can also have. Let's try builder dot add. I don't know if they add Yarn yet, but yeah, they have Node app. They have
Yeah,
npm app. I don't know if they add Yarn yet, but yeah, that's
yeah.
probably coming.
I think it's coming. Yeah.
So you can run your Angular, React Vue, and React White. In this example, it's running all of them with the same Weather API as a backend, and the service discovery setup is not that clean with the Angular that I don't like. Because of that, on my fun project, I generally um, you need to create this proxy config
Hmm.
to pass Weather API as a API. And on the Angular, if I open the code, you can just go API, and this
Yeah.
replace that proxy part. So if you run this application, um, another thing is they didn't add yet. They are bringing when you have npm app, it doesn't do npm install. It just try to run npm start or run. So because of that, I gone through all these Angular, React, White, and Vue projects and did npm install myself. But after that, when you do Aspire run, it will, if it works, it will just run all the applications, and we're gonna see the logs as well. So do you guys hear too much clicking when I click mouse?
Well, we. I can hear that you're working, but it's so
Yeah.
good. No, not the mouse. I see like just the keyboards. I can't hear
Okay.
the keyboards, but
Okay.
all good.
If it's not too disturbing, I'm just being
No,
warned by the wife. So you can
don't
hear she
hammer your keyboards.
she loves my keyboard. So we can see the npm output here, like npm start, npm run, and also the things.
Mhm.
So open ap open telemetry doesn't work that well. It just worked for it, but I'm sure there might be a way coming soon. But these front ends right now are all running from Aspire, and I didn't need to do like 5 different things and run. It's like beautiful, in my opinion.
Mhm.
um, and they are calling the Korek API. I can keep calling. Is it
Yeah.
randomizing? Yeah, it's
It
randomizing.
seems, yeah,
So,
yeah.
and this randomizing is coming from, our backend. Front end doesn't know anything about randomizing. So
Yeah.
running node applications like this is, I find it like really useful. So let's,
Mhm.
so just add npm app.
Yeah.
Let's see, what do we have? What else do we have? I'm gonna skip Aspire with Node because it's literally the same thing. I'm gonna do container build because this one is interesting one. Um, so normally Aspire has support for this application was a Go. Yeah, I remember checking the integrations here. Aspire, normally you can run like Go directly with Aspire with installing this. If we go here, like we could install this package and we could run any Go application directly from Aspire. But this
Mhm.
example, what we have here is an example. Let's say someone build an application with that doesn't have an integration here. That can be, that's not Go because Go has support normally. Sorry, I'm trying to click without click. Um, but here, what they are doing is that application here on the Go folder has a Docker file. That means
Mhm.
any application you can build a container with, you can run with Aspire. So this Docker container, Docker file is used here, and it build a container from it and it run it.
Mhm.
So I think this is quite useful because I know that you can run Keycloak. It's an identity provider in a container, and that give you identity in a box as part of your application. If you want to do development or if you deploy with that as well. So I'm not sure if I run this, but when I run this, it's gonna show that as a container resource. So we have project types are resource types. Like project is a resource type in Aspire App Host. We have Azure resources like Service Bus, and those things are coming as a resource types as well in Aspire App Host. And we have container resources as well. So here the source is the app. It's been built from the, I couldn't open. It's built from the Docker
Can you zoom
file.
in on
Yeah,
that? Yeah, people can
it
see
is
it.
just an
Yeah,
application. Just
it is.
give hello world.
Yeah.
Just this is the API. But being able to run, let's say Haskell. Let's say we don't have Haskell support, but we can containerize it. You
Mhm.
can run with Aspire. You don't need to have direct support if you have this kind of dependencies. Um, what else? Let's go. There is database containers talk about. Um, I'm just gonna do cat app host. I'm just gonna start doing it. um, this is an example of running databases with containers. So you, for example, you run your application, you have a valuable .test data. You can create a data volume because it's a container, and when you run it, when you take it down with a persistent life container lifetime, when you restart your application, you can have that volume mounted automatically, and you can keep your test data. That's an example of that one, which we can run and see the containers actually and volumes as well. We
Mhm.
will have more volumes than what we need because I will keep running multiple Aspire app right now. So let's check this one. Too much zoomed in, right? So um, all these have their because I stop and start a lot of applications. Some of them did not die correctly, but as we can see here, I think MySQL was one of the examples here. Um, just looking for mounts. This one doesn't have. PG doesn't have. Wait, do I have? Yeah. So this SQL server here has a mount on these database containers. So yeah, when we stop this application and rerun it, if we insert some data, we will keep our test data, which can be really useful. Like I always have problem with having test data time to time. So
Mhm.
an application runs here. This doesn't even have a front end right now.
Yep.
So um, so after running those, I need to normally go and kill those environments.
Yeah.
Database migrations is something I think we should finish with,
Mhm.
because when you run an Aspire application, let's say you have an API and you have SQL database and you want to create a migrations. Normally, before what would we do is we would create a SQL server and database in a container, and we would create migrations with .NET EF and stuff, right? But at the time, we would have database exist while we are creating the migrations. That was unnecessary. So when your resources start with your application at the same time, creating migration by default was kind of like not possible. So what they did is they create this example. um, I'm just going to show the code here. That's what I'm using actually. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to close this and move this to there and zoom in.
Mhm.
So let's open app host first. So we have an application here that is depend on this database, but we want to create migrations. But if they both start at the same time, creating migrations is a bit hard. So this example is really useful if you're gonna create migrations. So you follow this. There's also like a step-by-step part. But what this one does actually, it use, as I remember, Worker SDK. It create a background job called um, API, the database initializer actually. Doesn't matter the name of the background job, but it ensure the database created, and also as part of the running application with the app host, it also makes sure the application run the migrations, which you can do this
Mhm.
part with your startup of your application, but this part, this strategy here, that you put your migrations here. So in my current projects, I use scaffolding to grab an existing database DB context, which was very old framework, and I create the DB context with .NET 9. But for running locally, I need a migration to run and have a database ready. But for production, when I deploy this application, I don't want this to run. Um,
Mhm.
so this is another example of running migrations only locally. So you have your migrations and app here, but on your startup, you don't need to run. You only use the context. So in this example, this is using the DB context from, I don't remember where is the DB context on this, guys, to be honest. I think it is in the API model. Yeah. So it's using this DB context to create migrations and update the database. But in my case, I have DB context is scaffolded from existing database, which I shouldn't change. So because of that, my migration setup is only exist on the local run when I'm just running
Mhm.
local. So this is another really good example, and there is more on their website, on GitHub. On top of this, there's a lot of tutorials, and even the integrations here is really useful. I use all the time. There's a community toolkit. There is all the Azure services under here. Like if you have a service bus, Event Hub, Key Vault, anything you need is here. I mean, if it's not here, they are probably bringing it. So
Yeah.
yeah, this is kind of like go all over it, Aspire. With the on top of default Aspire, so you have the app host, and app host define your project. With Aspire, you can take that application and deploy it to Kubernetes. You can create your deployment files for Kubernetes, or you can use Azure Developer CLI. This is an example tutorial for that. You can just do AZT init and AZT up, and it take your Aspire application and deploy to container app environment on Azure. You need to have existing subscription, of course, and be either have some credit or something to deploy. But
Mhm.
there's a lot of like useful tools that um, can help you develop faster, and also other AZD templates can show how to write some integrations as well. So yeah, this is kind of it. So if I can come to our place.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting because you're just improving developer productivity, right? Imagine wiring all of those services on Docker Compose and leveraging like multiple tools only to do, to do like a single run. Like especially when I think there was the example you brought in like with the Redis cache, like Postgre, and all of those management tools as well to connect to those services. That's very handy, right? Uh, let's see if we have like questions. In but in the meantime, I have a question, right? So you're mentioning about those NuGet packages that were created by Aspire, the Aspire team and the community. Would there be any sort of issues if you are running those on your local, but you intend to deploy them to any sort of environment?
As I know, they are just a wrapper packages. So you don't deploy those hosting packages anyway. The hosting packages are only for running locally in your app host, but for
Yeah.
SDKs like client packages for connecting to service bus, Redis, those are just wrapper packages as far as I know. And
Mhm.
using those or default ones, if you don't use those aspired wrapped ones, you don't have those best practices.
Yeah.
And everything is open source, so for the security concern you can just go and check their code. um, what I was doing is, I because you can create an environment variable for each services, especially if you integrate with existing application. What I do is I create an environment variable in my each service called aspired bootstrap, and I
Mhm.
use aspired NuGet packages if it's running locally as an aspired bootstrap, or I also use aspire to run my integration tests on CI/CD pipeline. But when I deploy to production, because I don't have service discovery and stuff enabled on my existing old services, so I was
Yeah.
using defaulting, so I wasn't using aspired NuGet packages. So those you can still branch in your startup, depending on your environment variable. That's what I
Mhm.
was doing. But yeah, that's what generally what I do. Because you can't do like builder dot add something if you don't have service discovery enabled by
Yeah.
default. But what I'm playing with these days is if you start a greenfield project like from scratch, if you start with Aspire from scratch and if you go with AZD,
Yeah.
you don't need to use Nect packages. You can just go with Aspire because its service discovery come with you to your deployment at that moment.
Yeah.
So, or you might refactor your existing code and rewrite some of the connections.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I agree. Starting even like according to our poll, right? So I put like a question whether like people are leveraging .NET Aspire, like with like new projects, legacy projects, a mix of new and legacy, or people just starting. right? So 80%, well, we had like 5 votes, but like the 80%, so 4 people just like they're starting their journey, right? So I think that session comes like really handy because people are just trying to evolve, perhaps legacy, I guess, like that. That's in general like what you see on the market, a lot of legacy apps and bring Aspire on top of that with containers. Well, it simplifies really developer experience, right?
It
So
increased the developer experience a lot. Like
yeah.
my I'm working with like .NET Full Framework, and I miss working with Aspire because I
Hmm.
can't integrate with. But if you have anything with .NET Core level,
Yeah.
anything that you can containerize, Aspire is no brainer in my opinion. So if you have like a web project, if you have a couple of APIs, at my previous place we had multiple microservices that we were like very small microservices and using service bus, and
Yeah.
we for making the application and those multi services running locally was really hard deal because we had like 5-10 environment variable for each service that we need to configure.
Yeah.
Aspire, it was a single file, and it was you can source control, you have autocomplete, you have all the benefits of C sharp,
Yeah.
nicely typed language. So that's
No, all
pretty
good.
important. Yeah.
No, yeah. Let's see. Oh, Daryl, we got like a message in here that he said that he is using Aspire to run Orleans. It's great. Uh, to be honest, I don't know. Have you used Orleans, Sina? I have only explored like just like proof of concepts, but never
There
got
was
to run.
example Orleans voting in the samples. Is it the same one? I don't have much context about Orleans as well, but um, yeah, it was one of the first. That those samples are like there from the beginning, so it's
Hmm.
good that Daryl is using it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing there. Can you learn more about it? To be honest,
Yeah, maybe
and
make a talk about that.
yeah, just ping me if you are keen to share. So we're getting like to the ending here. Thanks for like the comments and people like participating on the poll. We have JetBrains license, right? So if you're keen, I have like a single license. If you're keen to get that, I'm just put like on the chat, but feel free to join the user group. Put a message in there and just say like the first one that comes in there with a message that if you want the license, just say I'd like a license, please, and then I'll hand it over like to you. So feel free just to put a message in there like directly on the chat, and then I'll ping you and we can share it. You want the arrow? Just go there first and submit like your message, man. Yeah, be
A
quick.
year of JetBrains license is pretty good deal actually.
I
I
like
have
it, right?
I have
Yeah.
a friend who is paying like he's the customer for them like for I think 8 years. He has a bit
Hmm.
discount because of like 5+ year stuff, but yeah,
Yeah.
he uses all the services, and JetBrains is like really good IDE set.
Yeah.
I use I'm a MacBook user at work, so I use
Yeah.
JetBrains to
Yeah.
myself
Yeah. I agree.
fund my
Yeah.
license.
Nice one. Yeah. So we're getting here like to the ends. I think like terms of comments, and I would like to thank you, Sinan, for coming from like as a contributor like in the technical community, coming in to share like your session. I really appreciate. And yeah, maybe like another time you come and you're
Thank
just welcome to
you.
return in anytime you want, really.
If I have more experience with similar things, or play with this more when I have something else to show, maybe we can do something about Linux and .NET development. It's getting more popular, maybe.
All good. Yeah,
Okay.
excited. Just ping me, and then we can sort like a session. Really, that's gonna be great. Yeah, that here, like say, is my invite to anyone in the community. So if you have any particular content you find like interesting and you want to share, right? As like Sina for example, he's been exploring Aspire with legacy apps, new apps. So just ping me, and then we can just arrange a session. Well, so we are finishing here. Thanks again, Sinan. Thanks for the audience. Thanks for staying with us. And catch you guys next time.
Thank you for the opportunity. It was fun.
Nice one. Cheers.
Cheers.